Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're happy to have you back, and we're in the final stretch now. So I hope you've been refreshed and you've had time to visit some of our exhibitors and have time to network with each other and catch up on some business. Now, earlier today, somebody mentioned the fact that we really weren't talking enough about the business plan, but we're probably going to be looking a bit more at this today. But we're also going to be looking at the bioeconomy in action, really looking at smart, sustainable, inclusive, and global business. This is really what it's all about. And just there in that last, in our express session, so to speak, the members of the media then reminding you that you've got a great story to tell. But it's really about spreading the word and making sure that that story is told well and making sure you're very much a part of it, because it is something that the wider community is extremely interested in. They want to hear from you. You have a lot to offer, and the time is right. So there's everybody out there competing as we look at the diversity of energy mix at the moment, and everybody is waving their own flag and looking for their own spot, be it solar, wind, renewables. So bioeconomy needs to be up there making a big splash just as much as everybody else. We have a great panel set up. I'm going to quickly introduce you to them. Here just on my left, the head of bioeconomy division from RISE, the Research Institute of Sweden, Birgitta Sundblad. So Birgitta, thank you so much for joining us. We'll welcome them all. It'll wake you up too, it's good. From Stora Enso, the Chief Strategy Officer, Hannu Korhonen. Hannu, thank you so much for being here. I'm leaving our man in the middle till last, just as I always do. The CEO of SilicoLife, Simão Soares. Thank you so much, Simão. And from the city of Joensuu, the Director of Strategy, Janna Puumalainen. Janna is there, thank you so much. Now, our chair today, a gentleman who has more than 10 years' experience as a science correspondent and really an enthusiast and a converter, hopefully, for the bioeconomy. We're thrilled to have him here with us from ITV News in the UK, Alok Jha. Alok, thank you so much, and I'll leave it to you.
Thank you so much. And the first thing that defeats me is technology, which is not good, is it? My name is Alok Jha. I've been a science and environment correspondent for newspapers and television for a very long time. Specifically, what I've been covering for a long time is technology in the environment, green technology, if you will. And it is exciting to be here talking to you at the cusp of what I think is going to be an important and revolutionary set of technologies and businesses over the next few decades. You all know this. The world will hopefully know this soon, and we've been talking a lot about media coverage and storylines and everything. And I think that as that happens, it will be interesting to see how it develops. Now we've had this is our third session today. The first session was all about defining bioeconomy and the new paradigms. The second was all about where the money might be coming from, how to get the businesses started. And this session, this final session of the day, is really all about the technology and the examples of things that are happening, the real things that are happening. Now, often these real things happen to be in small companies or laboratories, and so there's lots to do to scale them up, to turn them into things that will be global. But we need to start from somewhere. People often say that bioenergy, bioeconomy, is at the stage that renewable energy was maybe a decade ago. And by that we mean that about a decade ago, I remember even covering that subject for many newspapers, that people talked about renewable energy. They said it was the future. They talked about its sustainability, but it was very difficult to get people outside that community to take it more seriously take it very, very seriously indeed. And it was expensive. It was sometimes cost too much for installations, and people would, it wasn't the most intriguing story at the time. Now, 10 years later, so we've signed the Paris Agreement on climate change 2 years ago, and people are incredibly excited about this topic because it's so much cheaper to install wind, renewable technology. Solar panels have become so much cheaper. The rate of this technology becoming installed around the world is going up exponentially. And I think that that's what got people excited about the fact that we can possibly meet these really ambitious targets that were set in Paris 2 years ago. The bioeconomy is in the same position as that 10 years ago. It feels like there's a tipping point now, and we can learn a lot from the renewable sector in how to make this, this industry go forward too. So today, in this last session, you're going to hear some examples of technologies, of innovations in things like wood-based and forest materials. You'll be hearing about artificial intelligence that can design microorganisms for chemicals, food, and polymers. And you'll also be hearing about the role of cities in making sure that the bioeconomy is as prominent as it needs to be for all our sakes. So, can I ask the first speaker?
Good afternoon, everybody, and of course, thank you for the people here that had invited me to this afternoon speech. Before I start my actual presentation here, I would like to say a few words about the company I come from. It was mentioned here, RISE Research Institute Sweden. 1.5 years ago, in April 2016, the former institutes Inventia, ICT, and SP merged into form a Swedish institute sector, also with Swerea partly engaged into it. The headlines you see here on the picture is, of course, normally what most big institutes do. I would just like to emphasize that we are now united, merged into one. We employ about 2,200 people with an annual turnover of about 3.5 billion Swedish crowns. So quite a huge sector. Going back to my presentation of today, I decided to divide it into 4 different chapters or different parts, covering do we actually have the raw materials substantially that we would like to use for the bioeconomy? If we do we like the scenario of a bioeconomy? And what can we do? Some examples really covering the headline of this presentation, some emerging innovations maybe, and finally, if we don't see it happens as fast as we think, why don't we see that? This is actually examples of what we're talking about here, biomass. And this is actually the most common building block in nature. Cellulose is the base for all of this. And this is actually the amount of cellulose produced annually by photosynthesis, 100 billion tons. This is the amount produced by second, so quite a few amount of tons had actually been produced while we have been sitting here having a work day, as it was described to us earlier this day. If you should compare this to the amount of oil that we may not produce, but that we use and dig up, this is about 150 per second, ton per second of oil. So it's 20 times as much cellulose produced by the sunshine coming into the globe per second than the amount of oil that we use. So, yes, a bio-based circular economy is possible based on the amount of raw material. There's another question hidden here. Is the raw material available for the bioeconomy? To what should we use it for? There's a lot of political discussions, and I'm not going into that. There is a lot of raw materials out there, and we could decide what we should use it for. These are some headlines, and I will get back to them later on. What can we do with this biomaterial that we are talking about? There's a lot about houses and building. It's a lot about secure packaging. A lot happening in the area of packaging nowadays with all the e-commerce that we are into more and more. It's about printed matter and tissue, the more traditional areas. It's about more spectacular ones like human spare parts, food production, clothes and furnishing, which we heard about textile earlier this morning as well. It's about substrate for digital information and charge. It's about energy and propellants, and it's all, as we say, renewable, non-toxic, and environmentally friendly. So there's a big variety of different headlines that we could use our cellulose base for. So, some years ago in the company and the institute that I come from, Inventia, into this merger into RISE, we have been doing something that we call global outlooks. The latest one, or the last one, maybe the latest I would say that we did launched was in the 2016. It's called the Cellulose-Based Society. And it looks like this, and if anybody's interested, it could easily be ordered from us. You can only get it in hard copies. There's no e-version of this. One of the questions that we asked in this, one of the things that we did in this outlook was to make an investigation with a lot of people, trying to answer this question, do we really want this? Do the people on the globe really want a cellulose-based society? Yes or no? So we made an interview, an international one, with about 2,500 people coming from the countries, Sweden, Germany, China, Brazil, and the US. And one of the questions that they got in this was actually this one. Imagine a future in which resources from forests are used to create an array of products, everything from textiles, vehicle parts, to cosmetic and prosthetics. This leads to a forest becoming a more important resource in the production of materials and products for which we today use oil, plastic, glass, or metal. To answer this question, the 2,500 people got these choices. Yes, I feel very committed to this. It's happy, relieved, I'm curious about this. And I think most of the people here today would like to say thumb up for this one. At least I hope so. The other choice that I got was, no, I feel disappointed, I'm worried, I'm quite upset, or I'm actually really angry, I'm going to protest in public. And this is not really anything to laugh about, because this is the answer. So this is it's a bit challenging, it's a bit dramatic, maybe not also a bit unexpected, especially for the peoples that are already believers. And now, of course, the tendency is to say, yeah, but this cannot be the answers from Europe, specifically not from the Nordic Hemisphere, specifically not from Sweden. And to give you some more details, this is actually what is happening here. So you can see in all the different countries, there's a big portion of the people that is a non-believer of a bio-based or a bioeconomy. Also also not here, but in Sweden, I would say now being in Finland, sorry for that, you can see from the positive people group, the light green one is the people who are curious to know more, not the one that is believing, but the one that we could actually bring with us into the believing corner, so to say. And if you see on the other part, there is quite a few of the people, the light pink that is upset. And also at the bottom of these different staples, these are the purple ones that would actually go out and protest in public. And they appear in all the different countries. This survey we have a print of, if everybody's interested, I put a few of them on the table just inside the door, and they could also be ordered from us, of course. So bearing this in mind, I think we should all be engaged in the describing of the long-term benefit for mankind that we are talking about here. There are many opportunities and emerging innovations ready to be used for innovations, but new development and innovation has to be economically feasible to become innovations. And if half of the people on the globe doesn't even trust in the products that is going to bring the bioeconomy forward, how could you then actually decide to make the investments needed to bring forward these new type of products? There's a complex challenge out there, we all know that. It requires cross-boundary solutions. We all recognize this. It's an urbanization, it's a changing demography. It is also risk and security, also increasing, we see that part. During the last year, we have some environmental impact and resource extractions. Of course, there's a climate change, globalization, and digitalization. And we all know about this. And since these challenges are quite broad, that is also one of the reasons for us merging the former more branch-like institutes in Sweden into one, because this actually needs cross-functional collaboration. We will not be able to handle these type of challenges without a good portion of collaboration. So, back again to the cellulose-based society, the circular economy, or the bio-based material, or the bioeconomy, or what we should now call it, actually. This is what we are talking about as one of the first, maybe the last, the biggest portion of the cellulose on the globe, wood. These are the portions of wood, consist mainly of three different things. Cellulose, and then is one portion that's called lignin, which is about 25% of the wood piece, and then is hemicellulose. And this is about, what we're talking about here in the bioeconomy, is to make use of all these three parts. So these are the different value chains that we are working with in my division of RISE. It's about the sawmill value chain. It's about the pulp mill, the more traditional one, bringing forward pulp. Pulp could be used for a variety of different final destinations, but we know it's mostly as this, producing paper, of course. That is the cellulose value chain, digging out the cellulose portion to make other more spectacular part of the cellulose, like nanocellulose, other constructions and so on. Very, very strong things you can make from that. We have the lignin value chain that is today a lot debated within the area of bioenergy, but that could also be used for other things. And we had the thermal value chains to take control of the content of energy within these streams, side streams and also mainstreams. And then at the end we have the sugar value chains, which is actually bringing forward sugar molecules that could be used as the starting point for a variety of different chemicals. This picture we have been through before, so there is a lot of things that is actually going on here and happening here, and I would like to take you through a few of them very fastly. There's a lot of things happening in new building materials and also biocomposites for buildings. We see much more constructions in wood nowadays. This will increase. It's almost like a hockey stick. So we will see a lot of things happening in this area. But it's also about this, 3D printing or additive manufacturing of 3D parts, spare parts for humans. You can construct this kind of scaffolds like the jaws that you see here on the picture, but you can also go further into life science here. And this could actually build up a new possibility for human spare parts. It's also about nanocellulose, and that is to bringing out the cellulose part of the wood piece and grind that down to extremely small fiber particles to become more like a gel. From that you can make films, like you can see here on the picture. You can make aerogels, which is very lightweight, fluffy, but also form stable. Things that you could use for lightweight, you can use it for insulation, you could use it for a variety of different possibilities here. You can also use it like a strengthening agent for paper production, meaning that you can save fibers and produce a more lightweight box, for instance. This is a new and spectacular area, nanocellulose carrying, in this case, PSS, for creating a base for a supercapacitor. So big surfaces are made on paper machines. This is probably the world's most fastest production of surfaces. And you can use the surfaces to carry other things. You can also use the paper machines to produce other stuff. The paper here on the paper is not a paper. There's a 50% pulp fibers and 50% old jeans. So this is the 50% textile. You see on the picture here, but you could probably also use the paper machines in the future to produce more textile than that 50% example here on the picture. Another spectacular thing that is actually happening right now, that actually got some awards on the PPI last week, is actually taking mill side streams to produce food. On the side streams, you can grow fungi, algae, and then those can produce single-cell proteins, and single-cell proteins could be used for fish food, for cultivated fish, or used as a protein source for us directly. So you can see there's an enormous amount of different possibilities that are all emerging inventions, but it's also demand some techno-economical evaluations to make them innovations, actually to have someone invest in them and bring them out on the market, so to say. And to do that, you need the customer. We need to work with circularity as a norm. This is not anything that we could put together afterwards. Everything we develop today at our place, we try to set this circularity as the norm for what we do. It's no meaning for us to develop things to replace other stuff on the market if they are not having an environmental positive end use. So things had to not only to be circulated, but also had to be reused, had to be upgraded to become more valuable, as it turns out in the different circles here. So this we have to keep in mind, circularity. There is an innovation dilemma here on the market, not only based on the fact that we may not all of us see bioeconomy as a glorious future. It's also, if you sit on a pulp mill today, you can extract from that pulp mill lignin. You are the owner of the raw material lignin. And if you sit on that, you can decide, now I have the lignin here, what am I going to use it for? This picture tried to describe some possibilities that you can use it for. So you can have it as a filtering agent, you can make carbon fibers out of it, you can make activated carbon, you can make activated carbon fibers, you can use it as a binder, dispersant, or you can use it to make hydrophobe surfaces. So you are in the charge of your own raw material, so you are the one that's actually going to choose which type of product is this bioeconomy going to have from me. So take 2 examples. You can either use it to produce carbon fibers. You can use the carbon fibers to produce lightweight carbon fiber composites that you can try to convince the car industry to utilize in the cars, meaning that the cars will demand less biodiesel or less diesel to take you from position A to position B. You can also decide that you're going to use it directly to produce biodiesel. You're going to use it directly in the car. And this is a lot of the discussions that we are having today, making biodiesel out of lignin. This, of course, will then also be given some environmental impact, but it will only do it once. So the question is, which one of the routes should you decide now, sitting on this raw material? There is no answer to this question. This is not a problem. This is a dilemma you should choose, and we have to bring forward in the institutes the possibility to do the correct techno-economical evaluations of the difficult possibilities here to help the owner of the raw material decide which route to go. So it's all about scales. The ladies to the right, the small ones, probably are the early research made by the academia, and the big one is actually the investments in the market. And in between there's a lot of different steps we need to pass through. It is showing things, demonstrating things on a larger scale, and we heard just before the coffee break, this costs money. And that is, of course, a problem to raise this money, because this is not an emerging business. This is showing that there may be a business in the future. So for us, it's a lot about demonstration. To demonstrate carbon fibers, the roof from this model car is made from a composite of carbon fibers brought forward from lignin. It also contains a rechargeable battery on carbon, also from our raw material, and this is a work that is made together with some other companies. You can see there in the bottom, Sviria, KTH, and the company Blå Tråden. So it is about owning the test and demo plants. So we have quite a few of them within our company, but it's of course it's very important for us to be able to keep them, to get the money to have them, to put them on a level where they are reinvested in them, so that they are modern enough to actually show what is these new things that we would like to do. In my division, we also have quite a few of them. And as you can see, the pulp paper machine on the top here to the left, there are some people walking in the bottom of that picture, so that gives you a small vision of how big it is. So this is not anything that you take some small money and invest in. But of course, there is also smaller pilot lines, but you need to get through most of the different phases here. Back again to becoming an innovation partner with our customers on the market. That's what we like to position ourselves. It's about to do things together. It's about think new, of course, think ahead, and thinking together with the other guys, helping them to understand which route they should choose in their different type of dilemmas. So, from my point of view, this is my conclusions. For a circular bio-based economy, the renewable raw material is there, for sure. The emerging innovations are also there if someone like to invest in them, so the emerging inventions are absolutely there. Demonstration on a large scale enough for techno-economical evaluations has a bit scarce resources for the moment. It's difficult to raise the money. The innovation dilemma needs some decisive decisions and guts from the people owning the raw material. And to become reality, we all need to demonstrate the value to make the people on the globe believers. Thank you.
Thank you, Birgitta.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. I think that this has been, so far, a very interesting summit, and we have heard a lot of very interesting stories. I will now tell our approach to the bioeconomy or renewable materials way of working. I have 30 years experience in our company. Currently, I am the head of strategy and innovation in Stora Enso. About 10 years ago, our company was still very conventional pulp and paper company. Out of our revenues, something like 70% came from paper. Thereafter, because of the paper demand decline, which has been discussed here already, we had to then start a transformation journey, which has been really extremely tough, but also rewarding. I must say that I can proudly today say that we are the renewable materials company. We still have a long journey to go, and I'm sure that that will be at least as interesting as what we have experienced so far. And I must say that I thought already that I will get tired after 30 years or after 25 years of this industry. But no, I'm now much more excited about all the new products which we're developing than ever before. Our products, of course, like for many of us, are based on wood raw material, in our case coming mainly from the Nordic forests. And of course, well-managed forests are a prerequisite for our success in the future too. And at the same time, growing forest, of course, works as a carbon sink, as in photosynthesis, carbohydrates will be stored and oxygen will be released. Although globally forest area is unfortunately in decline, the European base is growing. Between 2005 and 2015, the European forest base grew more than the size of Switzerland. That's about 1,500 football pitches every day. Our company currently produces packaging materials, various pulp grades, wood products and paper, and the raw material for all of that is wood. And as you saw earlier today during Dr. Wallenberg's presentation, the film where we say that we at Stora Enso are certain that everything made with fossil-based materials today can be made from a tree tomorrow. We believe in that, and I will tell you a couple of things why I'm certain that this will also happen. We already saw this type of dividing wood into various main components. 50% of wood is actually carbon, 42% is oxygen, 6% hydrogen, and 1% nitrogen, and the rest is then different kinds of materials like calcium, potassium, manganese, so forth, of course as an average. In our classical pulp industry, what we do is that we take about 50% yield out of these different components, mainly trying to take all the cellulose, which is possible, and then, of course, hemicellulose. We would like to have that, and then we dilute lignin, and at the same time, a lot of hemicellulose. So the yield of pulp is about 50%. The rest, the diluted part, basically goes to energy generation. And that's fine. That's how pulp mills have been really operating. They have been exporting energy also to the grid, and it works relatively efficiently. I don't go into the returns on capital employed because they of course, in this kind of a capital-intensive industry are not that good. But what we have thought now is that we want to utilize these different components in a different way. So of course we will be selling some type of cellulose, but mainly specialty areas like fluff and dissolving pulp and so forth, and even develop them further into some yarn raw material and also do all those things which I will come back a little bit later to. Out of lignin, we think that we can do much better than just utilize the calorific value, but we have some other ideas. I will come back to these in a second in a little bit more detailed way. These are just some examples, some priority type of programs, R&D programs, which we have ongoing. They are by no means comprehensive presentation of everything that we do, but quite interesting to my mind. The regenerated cellulose is something where we want to produce some fibers for textile applications without the viscose process in between in the value chain. Viscose process is, of course, when very well taken care of, managed, a good process, but a lot of that is actually a little bit of environmental problem. That's why we then want to offer an alternative. This has gained a lot of traction among different kinds of brand owners because cotton supply is very stagnant. It will not probably grow, and synthetic fibers already cover some 65% of the total textile usage. Then one area, the bottom of this slide, microfibrillated cellulose is a very interesting and versatile material. We have their potential of using that as strength enhancer, binder, barrier material, and a lot of other things. With microfibrillated cellulose, we will be able, and are already able today, to produce fiber-based packaging that consumes less raw materials than earlier. I will show you that in a second as well. Then we also are, as the previous presenter told, it's possible to create different kinds of films out of this MFC material, and this is what we have been studying as well. Then if we turn over to another interesting area, which is lignin uses, we have today already a production unit in operation at Stora Enso Sunila mill in southern Finland. Sunila's lignin is developed for replacing fossil phenolic resins and as adhesives. The adhesives are used for plywood, wood laminates, laminated veneer lumber, and other wood construction raw materials. Interestingly, the carbon footprint for lignin is about 1/10 of the one of fossil phenols. Carbon fibers are currently based on fossil raw materials and are very widely, of course, used in high-performance composites for automotive, wind turbines, aerospace, and defense, even sports and leisure products. we will be able to produce wood-based carbon fibers for the same end uses in medium term. Another application which we are studying very much is energy storage. And there, the idea is to replace with our product the conventional hard carbon and graphite material in anodes in lithium-ion batteries and supercapacitors. Key applications are, of course, portable consumer electronics, power tools, electrical vehicles, stationary applications, and so forth. And the growth is expected to be very high. So in 2025, the estimate is that there will be 10 times more demand for lithium-ion batteries than today. Then if we turn to a couple of words about cellulose, in addition to using it as we do today, there is always, of course, the possibility of going into various other end uses, and xylose is something that is, of course, already in the marketplace, that is in terms of converted to xylitol and then used as a sweetener. Well, as far as we are concerned, we have a xylose process. We have already also shipments going on, so we are very far in that area. The other area are then bioplastics and certain intermediates. And in that area, it's of course a big, big area because plastics industry is huge. And therefore, we also are interested in this work. Then going forward to thinking about innovation as such and how these products will be developed. We have defined innovation in our company as it's a process of translating an idea into new value. For that, we always need a lot of parties. It will not happen in isolation. It will not happen accidentally. That is why the whole value chain will have to be involved. In this simplified illustration, we only have the business value chain, but of course that also includes a lot of other parties from universities, institutes, JDA companies, and so forth. One thing that is always sure, in our opinion, is that without consumer pull and need for products, there will not be business. This is well reflected in this slide showing that many of the big brand owners have already committed themselves to ambitious environmental targets in the near future. And that is something which we believe that is absolutely needed for this process to go ahead. Some examples about what we do today are here. You can also find these at the Stora Enso desk, one floor below this one. And these are totally brown paperboard crate. This is the paper board is converted by Elopak, and then the brand owner is Arla. And the beautiful thing is that we have been able to reduce weight here by 3% and carbon footprint by 24% in this case. Another one are the new fiber cups, which are suitable for example, crème fraîche usage. That is shown downstairs as well. And there all aluminium has been removed in that package, and the climate impact therefore reduced by over 50%. So these are some examples of what we are currently doing about this. Another thing is that we don't want to forget the opportunities of using wood in its more or less natural shape, which is wooden construction. Our cross-laminated timber elements not only have a carbon footprint lower than the competing construction materials, as you can see here, but they also, of course, act as carbon sinks, storing carbohydrates. And then the thing is that since these buildings will stand for decades, the carbon sink is for long term. And it's not only that they are very efficient in this respect, but what is nice with them is that they are very beautiful as well. Here we have Haltia Nature Center in Espoo, Finland, and it's all CLT material, cross-laminated timber, exterior and partition walls, intermediate floors and roof, and so forth. The construction method and material choice were selected because of the eco-friendliness and that is needed in a nature center. This building has won the Finnish Wood Award as well. Another one, which I very much like, is from Australia, Melbourne. That is the library at the dock and made out of our CLT, which was produced in Austria at our YPS and Buds and Leonhard units. And the construction of this only took 2.5 months. It's a partnership between the city of Melbourne, Places Victoria and Lend-Lease, and that was also awarded with a 6-star Green Star rating from the Green Building Council of Australia. But all this is nice, but what really is important is that it's business. And we have calculated a rough estimate that 1% shift of fossil-based and other materials to biomaterials will create the business of over 25 billion euros. So therefore, that alone is a sufficient reason to pursue the sustainable approach. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for the kind invitation to be here and to share the perspective of a small company in the bioeconomy. So SilicoLife, we are a company working the rational design of cell factories for industrial biotechnology applications. And well, yeah, it's not working, I think.
The big green one. No, the big green one.
Oh, yeah. Great, thanks. Having some problems with the technology. Hopefully not with the biotechnology. And I think one of my aims here is also to introduce the term of industrial biotechnology in this discussion. We already heard lots of good examples, but I think I'm the first one using this term. And my aim is also to discuss with you why industrial biotechnology is an important part of bioeconomy and why we'll have an important role in its future. So today we heard a lot about the future that we want to have, the sustainable plus desirable future. And To achieve this, for sure, we need to reduce the fossil dependency. And the way to do that is to use biological and sustainable processes, combining renewable feedstocks with biotechnology processes to have the molecules that we have today and also the new molecules that we want to have in the future. In the previous panel, the discussion was what can we produce in the bioeconomy, or what can we produce within the industrial biotechnology space. I would say hopefully everything, or almost everything. But more than that, I think we should look to the future and start looking to the materials that we want to have in the future and the properties that we want to have in these compounds, and how can we produce those compounds from renewable resources using a biotechnology approach. We also heard that we are entering a new era. We talk about Industrial Revolution 4.0. We talk about artificial intelligence, so that some jobs will be automated and run by robots. And the bioeconomy and the industrial biotechnology sector can work in the creation of new jobs. Not just highly qualified jobs with scientists developing these processes, but also jobs in the operational level of people working in biorefineries. And there is also an interesting opportunity to bridge the chemical and the material science with traditional sectors, as the pulp and paper, the forestry, and the agriculture. So industrial biotechnology can be a way to open new business lines for these traditional sectors, to use their experience as a good thing to introduce new products in the market, and to also disrupt some of the traditional markets that we have nowadays. And we can do this because nowadays we have advances in synthetic biology and artificial intelligence that allow us to be more creative and to really look to the future and try to do things that were not possible to do a couple of years ago. By using synthetic biology and artificial intelligence, we can reduce the cost of development to a new biotech process. So to recap, what is biotechnology, industrial biotechnology for me and for us at SilicoLife? It's really the use of renewable feedstocks or waste streams from different industries in an industrial process to produce chemicals. And these chemicals can be bioplastics, food additives, chemical building blocks, many different things. And what is in the core of this industrial process is a microorganism that for us is a factory. It's converting a feedstock into the product of interest. So we believe that before actually implementing or optimizing the biorefinery, the factory, we need to optimize the cell factory. And at SilicoLife, we have been combining artificial intelligence methods with biological knowledge to define this cell factory. So to optimize this cell factory, consuming different feedstocks and overproducing the compounds that we want. And we are also using the same rational approach to look to the market and understand what makes sense to produce now and in the future, and from what kind of feedstocks should we do that. So we are a small company based in Portugal. We started in 2010. We have been working mainly with large chemical companies that are now entering the biotech space and helping them to evaluate the different yield opportunities that they can have in their processes, and also helping them to optimize their cell factories. And we have been working with very different problems. So problems where we work with, let's say, with the common host used industry, but also with organisms that were isolated from different places, from the forest, for instance, that can have special advantages, and we help them to better understand how they work and how can we reshape their metabolism to produce specific compounds. And in terms of end products, we have been also working with very different things, so from bioplastics and chemical building blocks to food additives. And also in terms of feedstocks, we have worked in projects where we are using sugars from waste streams from the paper industry, for instance, as other kinds of sugars, C1s, where we work in projects with, for instance, CO2 combined with an energy source to produce chemicals of interest. And hopefully I will give you some examples later in my presentation. We like to use the GPS analogy to describe what we do. So we work with artificial intelligence methods, but when we are in a big city, and here we have a map of LA, we need to have a map, or we used to need to have a map to know what can we do there, what kind of things are at my disposal in this city. So we do model of these organisms to do the same thing, to understand what can we do with that particular microorganism in this industrial perspective. And then we combine with a set of artificial intelligence algorithms to define how can we optimize this factory to convert most of the raw material into the product of interest and minimizing the formation of byproducts as we do in an actual factory. But here we are talking about a cell, so we need at the same time to account with different biological aims that we need to ensure that are fulfilled. And what we are helping is our clients to understand also the economics of the process right from the beginning, also helping them to generate IP right from the beginning, even before going to the lab. And we are also helping them, if they are going to fail fast. And helping them to better understand what is happening in the cell that they are trying to manipulate. So, in fact, we are not just helping them to accelerate the strain development process, but we are helping them to generate IP right from the beginning. And in some cases, also to avoid specific IP bottlenecks or specific metabolic bottlenecks. So again, the question, what can we produce with a microorganism? So we can produce we can use microorganisms and having them in an industrial biotech operation to produce everything that they naturally can produce, but more than that. For instance, we work in the evaluation of products that are only available in plants, helping our clients and partners to select the different genes involved in the synthesis of those compounds, and in defining the best, let's say, set of genes to be introduced in a particular cell factory, in a particular host, and then optimizing this host to produce a compound that before was only available in plants, so we need land to have those plants, we need to extract, and now we can have this same product using a fermentation process like we produce beer. We can produce these compounds, we can use different feedstocks, and we can have the product and having a much simpler downstream process. So we like to say that we are a rational design company, and we are also looking to what kind of compounds should we work with. So we use the same kind of rational approach, combining text mining and artificial intelligence data to look to the patents available in a particular space, to look to the literature available in a particular space. As I like to say, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we want to know in an efficient way what is already out there and use that information in our favor. And we have been doing this to select interesting products to be produced, the most interesting host microorganisms to be used in that particular case, and also what kind of feedstock should we consider. So we are a small company. We started in 2010. We have been working as a service provider, working with large organizations, and our differentiation factor is really to look to the biological problem, solve it using a hopefully smart way, and then present results to the client that the client can understand, so in a biological language. So we use artificial intelligence, but we like to see ourselves as a biotech company, and I would say today as a bioeconomy company also. So we have been working with different players, from agriculture to materials to chemical building blocks. So we have been learning a lot in the past years, and we have been also involved in some public funded projects that I will tell you in more detail, because we can, let's say, disclose in more detail what we are doing in those cases. And so tomorrow, one thing that we also discussed was the need of a concept. And I was talking with Joanna in the coffee break about the 40 hottest companies that we were last year. And from those 40 hottest companies, I think LanzaTech is one of them, or it's in the 50 hottest. But it's interesting to look to those numbers and see that last year, 30 out of 40, they were US-based companies. Those 10 that were not US companies, I think 5 were from Europe. And this year, 37 out of 40 are US-based companies, and I think only 1 or 2 are European companies. So we can say that Europe is a world-leading producer and developer of technology, but we can see that most of these technologies are in fact commercialized in the US, and I think we should talk about this. And for instance, why a company like LanzaTech that moved from New Zealand to the US could not consider Europe to do that, and why we have European companies in the bioeconomy space going to the US to in fact commercialize those technologies. So I think that's something that we need to have in mind. So a couple of projects to show that industrial biotechnology can be a real relevant driver in the bioeconomy. So Birgitta was a project where we work in the design of cell factories. So a yeast and bacteria that were growing in the black liquor that is a waste stream from the pulp and paper industry to produce PHBs and succinic acid. Those compounds were then functionalized by different companies to have extra functionalities, and they were then converted to bioplastics that were tested by Soares and Fiat. So it's interesting that in a project like this, we can really see a value chain, a complete value chain from a waste to a product with enhanced capabilities in industry with really high standards. So again, when we are talking about the future of bioeconomy, we should talk about the things that we want to produce and that we already have nowadays through a petrochemical process, but also the new materials that we want to have in the future. Another example of combining different industries. So it's this project that we are running with different Scandinavian partners. I think Finland is not represented here, but so brown algae is a problem, is a waste in several countries. In this project, we are working in the design of 4 thermophile organisms isolated from extreme places in the ocean, and we are manipulating them to produce chemical building blocks from this waste and using the sugars in these brown algae. Another example is a project, so we all know that biodiesel is out there, but we have an important byproduct when we are producing biodiesel, that is crude glycerol. And the idea in this project was to use crude glycerol without manipulating it as a feedstock. So we work in the engineering of yeast that could handle this crude glycerol, and we help our partners to overproduce the target chemicals. One of them was PDO, that is a de-icing fluid. So for the ones that are flying today, for sure we will take benefit from this product. So it was just to describe with a couple of examples specific benefits resulting from industrial biotechnology. We have been working as a service provider since the 2010, and we are now moving to our own products also. So it's a challenge for us in terms of also funding this. We're able to bootstrap this company just by working and providing services, and we are now tackling a new challenge that is apply the technology for ourselves. So first, we designed a new pathway. So a pathway that was not described using a new combination of existing activities to produce a drop-in chemical. This was done completely in silico, so without entering any kind of biological knowledge. And then this was validated in vivo in the lab. So we have this new pathway for the production of this specific drop-in chemical, and we hope to start the discussions to license this technology early next year. And we have been also working in the definition of a portfolio of products. So using these rational methods, we look to the more than 10,000 molecules to better understand why they should be produced and how using a biotech approach. We are working in finalizing the selection of 3 to 5 families of compounds, and the idea is to start a development program to have bioprocesses to produce these compounds. One of the things that was also mentioned today is that we have big brands and big companies saying that we don't want to keep using chemical synthesized compounds, and we want to have them naturally sourced. But it's impossible to sustain these markets by only having the extraction process from the plant. So biotechnology will have and must have an important role here. And that's it. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell what the cities have to do or what they can do related to the topic of today. This is a picture from my town, Joensuu, not a very big one, 76,000 people, university town, located 400 kilometers northeast from here. There is beautiful 25 centimeters wide snow cover at the moment. The picture is more or less from the city center. There is a big river running through the center and opening up at the lake in front of the town. The empty area in the front, it used to be a forest industry site. Once it was the largest sawmill in whole Scandinavia. Then it was closed down, burned accidentally. And after some discussions, the city bought the area, 30 hectares, with €1. At the same time, we got the biggest land cleaning operation carried out so far in Finland. It took 2 years and €12 million. But now we have this 30-hectare area in the city center to be developed. We can build there dense infrastructure. We can build there a lot of living for the people. And this means all good things for our climate targets. Then below left, you see a bridge. It is a new investment. And when we look at the bridge, it was selected for the Bridge of the Year a couple of years ago. It has quite a lot of wooden construction in the bridge. At the moment, we are building at the end of the bridge at the riverside the tallest wooden building in Finland, 14 stories. It will be used for student housing, and there is also research and development collaboration with the university and University of Applied Sciences. So over 70% of the European population live in urban areas. Urbanization is increasing everywhere, and construction concentrates in these growing centers. What we use as materials, what we use as energy there, how we organize the traffic there, it really matters. In Finland, 99% of our cottages are made out of wood and 75% of single-family houses. But with public building and with big building, we are not so good. This example is also from Joensuu. Our sports, exhibitions and concerts arena used to be the largest wooden building when it was finished some good 10 years ago. Metla House is one of the most beautiful wooden office buildings on the planet. There are nearly all the tree species found in Finland in use, and the exterior walls are actually recycled over 100 years old logs. And this is the home of the headquarters of the European Forest Institute at the moment. We have also carried out the largest wooden apartment project in Finland, also for student housing. Joensuu has one of the most ambitious climate goals in Europe. We want to be carbon neutral already by 2025. And as we started to work from 2007, we have already now decreased the emissions by over 30%. There is really a transition for more bioeconomy ongoing. It's not only the city, but it's also our inhabitants, the industry, and the businesses. Our district heating is done with wood-based renewables already at the moment. Thank you, Fortum. Fortum is also the tank for the wood-based bio-oil production plant. It uses fast pyrolysis technology, and it's first of its kind in the world on an industrial scale. Also, thanks to Stora Enso Enocell plant, fuel oil was replaced by biofuels some time ago. And in our own wastewater treatment plant, we extract energy from biogas, for example. This is a local housing company. They changed their heating mode in the wood-based district heating, which is produced by local energy cooperative. And so every year, 2 million liters of actually imported oil is replaced with cheaper local forestry energy, and also we support at the same time the employment in the region. We work also to extend the carbon sinks. In Joensuu, there is an association, Environment Online School, which is a network with almost 10,000 schools in over 150 countries. They have had a global campaign to plant 100 million trees by the end of this year. The results will be announced early 2018, but preliminary information tells that it looks really quite good. Joensuu is one of the most northern places where you can grow cherry, but we have cherry and apple orchards recently founded as new public edible parks. And we also have allotment gardens where our inhabitants can do some gardening. Then it also matters what we do with our forest. Joensuu is among the Finnish municipalities the fourth largest forest owner in Finland, with 9,000 hectares, and including 170 parks, which we are managing for the recreation of our inhabitants. The cities do a lot of public procurement. We, even quite a small town, 100 million euro last year, and 70% of that we did the procurement with some kind of environmental criteria. We are also a fair trade town, and we support smart traffic. This is Finland's first cycle street, which was opened this autumn. The guy with the red bicycle there in the front is actually our mayor, who is also sitting here in this hall today. You can do a lot also with everyday life in the cities. As you saw our river, we of course must have a city fishing guide in place. So actually in the middle of the town, you can even do some fishing. Then basically in all European towns, we have local and organic food circles. In Joensuu, we already have one outdoor gym with energy-producing exercise bikes where you can actually charge your mobile phone while you are cycling. And then, of course, the large events in the cities, they produce a lot of energy, generate a lot of litter and rubbish. So we had a big orienteering event last summer, and this is one of the oldest and biggest rock festivals in Finland. Those both have eco certificates. We try to educate adults with a lot of different kinds of courses and seminars, from eco-cleaning to solar energy, but it's actually a lot easier to educate the younger ones. The footprints there, in Finland we have a free lunch at a comprehensive school. So there is the carbon footprint of 2 different school meals calculated. The bigger one is, of course, the one which contains meat and cheese and those type of things, and then the vegetarian one is the smaller footprint. But we have just recently developed a completely new learning environment for carbon footprint. It's based on phenomenon-based learning. There is a lot of sensor technology at the school. The measurement data is saved in the cloud and used in the teaching. So the children can observe the surrounding and learn from what they do, how it affects the carbon footprint. It was developed together with Sensire, one of the companies based in Joensuu. This is actually the school, how it looks like on a winter day. And here are some examples. There is solar panels, so how much solar energy has been produced, how much is used in the lights, and what is the water consumption, for instance. The cities can choose how they do the investments. Municipal financing launched the first green bond initiative in Finland, and we have had 43 million euro green funding for 2 our new school investments just recently. The smaller school, there we favored the use of wood and looked for sustainable and energy-efficient technical solution. And the quite big school there, we have bio-based district heating together with solar energy and wind power. Then, just recently, we did an innovative plot selling competition. In an attractive location at Riverside, we fixed the price and based the bidding criteria on innovativeness, architecture, and sustainability. And so now we will be getting a block of flats where there is green roof, first on a bigger scale in our town, sharing economy solutions, electric car facilities. Of course, we are in Finland, so there will be a quite open community sauna, arts project, and also in the technical solutions, quite some novelties. So the cities and towns have a lot of local implementation power. We use a lot of public money. We can influence our inhabitants and other stakeholders in the area and beyond. So we can contribute a lot to the global transition in the bioeconomy, and also we can influence the pace in which the things are happening. In addition to these general city factors, Joensuu happens to be a very strong hold in the bioeconomy, forest bioeconomy knowledge, even at the global scale. We have about 600 experts, over 6,000 jobs related to the sector. We have education at all levels in forest bioeconomy, and also, for instance, one of the biggest forest machine factories in the world from John Deere, almost at the city center. We, of course, have also opportunities to expand and to offer. If you want to be doing green business, you can come to our green park. There are now 550 jobs, and we aim to double that in the near future. It's located next to the harbor and next to the railway. And actually, from our harbor, you can come to Helsinki and to all over the world. The waterways are such. Joensuu, we are the growing capital of North Karelia. 1/3 of the population is less than 25 years old. We are the host town of European Forest Institute, but also university town, 20,000 students in the town. It's an area with 4 seasons. Last winter, the cross-country skiing period was extremely long, but also the Finnish heat record over 37 degrees has been measured at our airport in Joensuu. And we are in the middle of Finnish lakeland and in the middle of the Finnish forests. I'm quite happy to be here with you and announce our newest initiative. We are launching a Joensuu City Challenge international competition with the deadline in March. And we will use 200,000 euros. We have defined 4 city platforms where we look for innovative proposals. And this, we have thought that this might be of interest, especially for small and medium-sized companies and for bioeconomy solutions. And our idea is that after these competitions, the winning proposals will be implemented as pilots. So, as said, Joensuu is only a town with 76,000 people. Helsinki can do a lot more. London, Washington, Sydney, the Chinese cities. And the prime ministers were calling for work and action to be done. They called that we should deliver. We have had similar kind of ideas. This is why, as a take-home gift, you have working gloves. And if somebody missed them in the morning, we have also a stand downstairs so you can pick up your working gloves from there when you leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our speakers. Now, because we're getting quite close to the end of our session, I'm going to wind up with just one or two very, very quick questions, which I think hopefully will try and elucidate some of the points. Birgitta, I want to ask you, there's one thing which I think is one of the most important stats I heard in the whole of the presentations, which is that you said that 50% of people when asked are uncertain about the bioeconomy. I just wonder if you have any more information or insight into what they're concerned about. What do they think so worrying or dangerous or negative about it?
Yes, I do have that, and of course you can read more in this printout about that. But I think people are very interested in buying yogurt and milk products in the type of package that you are now made available on the Scandinavian market. That is one thing, but if you talk about the full bioeconomy, there's a huge amount of the people that is actually afraid of us just harvesting all the forest and not replanting them. And that, I think, is that they see in front of themselves a desert kind of landscape all over the globe. So instead of us pushing the possibility to harvest the forest again and again and again, I think there is a one-off feeling from these people.
And so that's something to tackle amongst many others, I'm sure. And just one final question for you, Simão, then. You say that so much technology is developed here in Europe, and yet many of the companies are in America, and you want to talk about why. Now, I'm asking you that question. What do you think is the thing that European governments or others can do to sort of get those companies over here?
I think there are several reasons. One is probably, let's say, the VC environment and the money that is required. Jennifer said, I think from our calculations, we were expecting €500 million to have a company in, let's say, in cruise. That's a lot of money to raise in Europe. But I think it's not that. I think the US, they had a smart strategy by having initial biofuel strategy that in fact had lots of problems, but created the resources and the need to, after having that infrastructure available, to have more and more companies developing new technologies that could be then, let's say, translated to those facilities. And in Europe, I'm not sure if we were able to do the same things.
Okay, lots to think about there. I'm afraid we'll have to end the session there. If you have questions for the speakers, I'm sure that they'll be more than happy to answer them in the networking cocktails and meetings later on. But until then, thank you all for being here. And can I just ask you to put your hands together for our panel?
And a big thanks to all of the panel, and of course to you, Alok. Thank you so much for that very engaging session, and indeed all those presentations, very much information-led and very educational as well, I think, in terms of perhaps a few ideas there that I certainly hadn't come across before, but then again, I'm being entirely enlightened throughout the day with some exciting new ideas and really seeing the potential for this sector. It really is quite exceptional. Now, our final, well, almost the penultimate session of the day. We're going to just change a little bit, and we have a short keynote speaker to kick off this session and then followed by a full discussion. So I'd like to welcome a gentleman who has worked in many policy issues since joining the OECD. He's worked in innovation, digital technology for economic growth, climate change, environmental innovation, right across the board. And he is also one of the key members of the team guiding the OECD's Going Digital project. So please welcome the Deputy Director of OECD Directorate for Science, Technology and Innovation. Please welcome Dirk Pilat.
Thank you very much, Anna, it's a real pleasure to be here. I know we're sort of starting to wrap up a little bit at the end of the day, but I would like to give you a little bit of food for thought from a little bit of the work which we've been doing at the OECD. Now, we produced a report on the bioeconomy a number of years ago, which was really trying to look forward at that point in time to try and see, well, where could we be going? And we're still, I think, trying to understand that a little bit better. What I'd like to talk about is a little bit about some of the barriers and opportunities there are. I think we've heard a lot about the opportunities. I think there is a very bright future ahead, but there are some real issues which I think we still need to deal with. I think also we look, and this is from the German Bioeconomy Council, which many of you have probably seen. I do think we see that bioeconomy is slowly starting to become something which is on the mind of also political leaders, in the sense that many countries are now starting to develop national bioeconomy strategies. You see the darkest dots. These are countries which have really clear, dedicated biotechnology strategies, and Finland is one of those. But there are also many countries where this is still a little bit sort of, there's something starting to happen a little bit, but it's still not very much on the mind of policymakers. So I think there's still work to do there to try and put this on the agenda. There's work to do there to try and sort of say what we mean by it and how we're trying to push ahead. And also I think we still see a lot of diversity. I think today we've seen a lot of discussion about biomass, particularly about forestry, but in some countries this is more about the blue economy, it's more about oceans, it's more about marine biotechnology. In some countries it's more about health. So there is a lot of diversity here, which I think we need to channel because it's all about bio in some way. Now, we put a report together earlier this year about investment, which is focusing on climate. This was produced for the G20. It was given to leaders earlier this year, and it focused on three components of investment. One is really about the investment climate, which I think we've spoken a lot about today. Just want to mention a few things about that. Secondly, it focuses on structural reform, because if we talk, for instance, about scaling today, well, a lot of this is basically, it's a general European problem. It's a general problem in many areas that we have difficulty scaling firms, and a lot of firms leave. Well, this has to do with the fact that we still don't have a fully integrated single market. We have difficulty sort of scaling firms in that sense. We don't always have the access to finance. These are issues which we can work on to try and get that right, but it's really about structural reform. And then there are dedicated bioeconomy policies, which I think we need to get right. Now, I'm mentioning all three of these because I think if you use them together, you can reinforce your strategy. If you only have bioeconomy policies, then you risk losing a lot of the momentum because you're still fighting against the stream. You're going against the stream where policy is going in certain other areas. Just two examples of this, and we touched on it a little bit earlier today, is still the momentum in terms of investment. It's slowly tipping, it's slowly starting to change, but there's still a lot of momentum pushing for more investment in fossil fuels. It's starting to tip. I think we heard some of the announcements this week, also of banks pulling out, but if you're looking at fossil fuel subsidies for support, particularly in developing countries, this is still a big issue. We don't spend enough on the R&D, which is also supporting sort of the bioeconomy, so we need to work on those issues. Second signal, agricultural policies. Our agricultural policies still support unsustainable use of agriculture in many different cases. This is what we do at the OECD, looking at producer support for agriculture. The dark blue part, it's going down, but it is still increasingly unsustainable because we are still trying to produce, support the use of fertilizer, which is not always very sustainable. So there are things like that I think we need to work on to try and make sure that we have the system, the signals all moving in the right direction. Final one I'd like to use here, because it's a little bit more of a global issue. I think we heard very much, okay, it's sustainable in Finland, it works in Finland. If you look globally, there is a real issue which we need to tackle. Because basically what is happening, that industrial biomass in many cases is competing with food. So how do we deal with that? How do we make sure that it is not competing with food, that it is using the residues, that it is based on marginal land, that it is trying to get these things right? And I think, so there are a couple of things which I think we need to look at, we need to work on to make sure that those signals are moving in the right direction. Because sustainability of biomass is really key to also really get the support for where we're going here. Because I think this is one of the things I see at the OECD when I talk to my environment colleagues. Well, the bioenergy example is still there. It's still in people's mind as something. So there's still a reluctance to say, well, this is a good thing. This is something which we need to move towards together. One issue, and standards. I think we touched on it a few times. This is the example of biofuels. We have a massive scattering range of standards that are currently available. And of course, that again means that it's hard to get a single market to really get moving towards something which is a little bit more moving together. This is the example of biofuels, but it is something which affects a lot of the bioeconomy in general. We spoke about the circular economy already. I think this is something where, again, I think we need to look into how it fits. And one thing we're doing a little bit at the OECD to try and sort of match up how bioeconomy strategies actually match circular economy strategies. And there are some points where this doesn't entirely match. If you're looking at waste, for instance, how we deal with waste, it is something which doesn't always work in the same way. So I think, again, something which needs to have some attention. I'm not going to touch on this one. What we're trying to do a little bit is building also, I think, on the presentation which Esko Aho gave this morning, which is, what are some of the key elements of this bioeconomy policy framework? What do we need to look at? And I think we spoke about most of these things already. I think you need to look at the feedstock. You need to look at the technology push. What can you do to really move forward in terms of incentives, in terms of R&D, in terms of financing to make it work? We need to work on that market pull as well, which is about regulation, it's about standards, it's about public procurement, all these different things which I think we can do. And then there are a couple of general things which we need to work on as well. Metrics, we didn't talk about that much. Definitions, terminology, standards, those all matter. Skills and education, we spoke about that. Public acceptance as a real issue. And governance, because I think we still see in many cases this is very fragmented across governments in terms of how this is being dealt with, and different parts of the government are pushing in different directions. So we need to try and bring that more together. Just 2 points at the end. One is public procurement. I think the example we just heard of Joensuu, I think in a sense that is really public procurement also in action at the local level. There are also things which you can do more generally at the national level. This is an example from the United States where this is certified bio-based label, which then means that you certify for public procurement from the government. These are the types of things which governments can try to look at. Yes, there are issues with public procurement, but it is something I think we can try to see whether we can do more around that. Secondly, and I think also in the previous panel we heard a lot about that already, innovation. Are we really investing enough here to try and drive this forward? I think there is a real potential about some of these technologies, machine learning, artificial intelligence, synthetic biology. Some of these areas in European context, we don't always like them that much, but I think there is a potential here to drive this forward, because if you can lower cost, if you can bring costs down, if you can develop new business models, then you can also really make sure that this technology moves forward a lot more quickly and has much more impact. And for instance, also deal with some of the trade-offs which we currently see with sustainability. Just to end with a few messages. One is, I think, this issue of policy alignment, which I think still is something which we need to tackle better in terms of making sure the link to climate policies, to sustainability, to agricultural policy really works. I do think we need to have more attention on the demand side to try and develop these markets a little bit better. Thirdly, don't forget to invest in the technology. I don't think this is something which is still moving very, very quickly. And if we can try to drive it more quickly, then costs will come down, prices will come down, and this will become a much better business case than it is at the moment. And thirdly, I think finally governance is really key, because we still are sometimes pushing in different directions. So I think if we can get that right, we're a lot closer to really moving to this sustainable bioeconomy. We have a report coming out a little bit later this year and I've left a few flyers at the back, which deals with a couple of these issues, a policy framework, looking at sustainability, biorefineries, and also at what it means for fossil fuels. And I'll end with a few things on our website. Mentioned there, for instance, that we have done some work on synthetic biology. We've done some work on marine biotechnology as well. We didn't really talk about it, but I think it is an issue to look at as well. There is real potential there as well if we get it right. We've done some work on bioplastics, biochemicals. So there is, I think, something to draw on, and please have a look at that. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dirk. Please stay with us. You're going to be in good company now in a moment, and you can really examine some of the issues that you raised. And indeed, I'm sure there will be many more issues raised in this panel. If we could please call the panel to join Dirk, please, on stage from the Asia Investor Group on Climate Change, the project director, Rebecca Mikula-Wright. Rebecca, there she is. Thank you so much. If you just sit beside Dirk here, actually. From the Brazilian Industrial Biotech Association, the president, Bernardo Silva. Bernardo is here. Good. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. He had showed up earlier, so I was a little worried. So I was hoping he wasn't going to go anywhere. Thank you so much. If you can then maybe save the seat beside you, because we'll have that for our chairperson. But next, from the Moscow School of Management, Skolkova, the president, Andrei Sharonov. Andrei, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And as I say, if you please leave a space there in the middle. Then our final panelist for this from China, the China CAMC Engineering Company, the vice president, Wang Yuhang. Wang, thank you so much to join us. So this is our great panel in place here now, and coming to chair this panel, a lady with tremendous experience in the role of climate change, very passionate about the program, particularly in her own country, in Canada. So please, a very warm welcome for the Director General of CANMET Energy, Judith Bossé. So Judith, I will leave this in your very capable hands, and we have just about an hour, so I'm sure we have a very interesting dialogue just about to start. And again, Dirk, thank you for setting the scene. Thank you so much, Judith.
Thank you very much, and it's a great opportunity for me to be here to moderate this panel. So, as the world makes the transition to the low-carbon economy, we in Canada, at least in the Government of Canada and governments, provincial government, believe that the bioeconomy provides an essential source of solution for climate change, economic growth, employment, and rural development, which is quite important in Canada. Our politicians are actually starting to use a statement like, anything you can make from a barrel of oil, you can make from biomass. So that's starting to brand that there is actually a commitment from the political level. There has been this summer, our premiers and our ministers of natural resources have committed to a forestry bioeconomy framework that actually lay the principle by which we will transform this industry. So, but we know that we're still in the early days of the bioeconomy, and in some way the world is still feeling its way, still developing the technologies and the public policy which we heard. And we need to also grow our markets. So this panel will basically discuss the barriers and the opportunities building on our guest speakers. And they will present both barriers and opportunity from their unique perspective on the topic. So I will ask each of them to present shortly both opportunities and challenges, and following that we will go into the question periods from the audience. So I will start with Rebecca, please.
Great, thank you very much, Judith.
There we go. Okay, that's on. Hi, I'll just to provide a little bit of context. I'll just tell you a little bit about the organisation that I run. So I'm with the Asia Investor Group on Climate Change, and this is an initiative built to raise awareness of Asian investors to incorporate climate change risks and opportunities into their investment processes and practices. We launched about 15 months ago with about 8 founding members. We now have 19. We can't quite keep up with the demand of the investors. It's early stage demand, but there's demand there that I'm trying to meet and building a team to meet that. We collaborate with other international institutional investor groups. There are 4 such groups globally. There's the European Institutional Investor Group on Climate Change, which some of you may know, North American Series Investor Network, and the Australian-New Zealand Investor Group on Climate Change. So just to set the scene from that institutional perspective, and I will talk about the opportunities, and a major new initiative has been launched this week at the Macron One Planet Summit. And these 4 global groups launched a new initiative called the Climate Action 100+. And this is a new 5-year globally coordinated investor collaborative opportunity, focusing on 100 of the largest global greenhouse gas emitters. And these investors, who I'm pretty excited to say we have 225 investors worth $26 trillion in assets under management who've signed up to this initiative. It hasn't closed off. It's still open to investors, and we're still getting more investors joining on. So this is a massive, unprecedented coalition of investors who are sending a really strong signal to markets and broader society as well. And they're doing this by, they'll be asking companies 3 main things. Asking companies to show their board level governance and oversight of climate risks and opportunities, showing how they're reducing their emissions in line with the Paris goals of 2 degrees or less, and then how they're disclosing all this activity, which is aligned with the Financial Stability Board's Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. Not very catchy. So this is a 5-year project, and we're looking to have, quite a bit of impact. There'll be annual benchmarking reports issued and so on to show the progress. And it is a carrot and stick. If there isn't progress, investors will use their very substantial weight against these companies by whether it's divestment or voting. They've got various tools that they can use to show the companies that they're really serious about this. So it's a very coordinated message that they're sending to these companies. So it might sound like they're addressing the risks, but actually this is an opportunity because the investors are working with the companies to create this change, which will unlock the scale that's needed for many of the solutions that I've heard here today that you're all working on. And I'm so excited to hear about so many of these fabulous innovations and solutions that are here today. And so by working with these companies on this transition as they move out of the fossil fuel economy, or their business, I should say, they need to find solutions. They need to find these low carbon solutions. And these are the biggest emitters. So they need big solutions. And so that's where we're going to get the scale. And you've got these big investors who are helping them, who are invested in them to try and bring about these solutions. So that's where I think this is a massive opportunity. Just to talk about some other sort of specific opportunities for Asia, the International Energy Agency has identified that $7.7 trillion is needed by 2050 to reach the 2-degree trajectory in Asia alone on energy efficiency and renewable energy. So that's the scale of the opportunity. So they're well and truly laid down the gauntlet. The challenge, of course, is, how do we get there, and how do we get there, in the time needed? I'll just touch on a couple of specific opportunities. There are a lot, and then I'll talk about the challenges that are associated with them. Recently, you might be aware of the IFC Forests Bond that was issued earlier this year, which was the first of a kind principal protected fixed income instrument that pays a coupon to investors in the form of cash or carbon credits. Interestingly, it was underwritten by the mining giant BHP, who will take off those carbon credits that are left over for their own offsets. So this is quite an innovative product, as with a lot of these green or climate-related bonds, oversubscribed. There is a lot of demand for investors. Now they're seeing that it fits their risk-return profile, and it has good green credentials and good projects underneath that. So we're looking to develop more of those products like that. There's an Australian-based group called New Forests, and they developed the first institutional investor-grade investment fund dedicated to sustainable forestry in Southeast Asia, their Tropical Asia Forest Fund. They take a whole-of-landscape approach, and there are large global groups like Unilever who are looking for more opportunities to invest in sources from climate and forest investments that are linked. Often they're the climate outcomes and financial outcomes that are not linked, but we are starting to see some evidence of some new products coming to light along those lines. A couple of other innovations just to mention. Fossil fuel replacement. So there's from sustainable forestry projects in Australia. They're building biofuel bricks, and they're going into offtake agreements with Japanese utilities to use these biofuel bricks as coal alternatives. So we're starting to see some really good innovation come out and being deployed in Asia. Somebody mentioned cups and paper cups or plastic cups this morning, and I just thought I'd mention a new innovation, a new startup between an Australia and Chinese group using coffee husk, which is a waste product, a byproduct of the coffee production process. So this particular coffee roaster was trying to figure out what they could do with 10,000 kilos of waste a year, which has no nutritional value whatsoever. So they came up with a new ceramic alternative coffee cup that you can use in cafes and is like your keep cup. I don't know if you have that here. That's what we call them in Australia, your reusable, coffee cup. And their aim is to get rid of disposable coffee cups. It's dishwashable, it's microwavable, it's virtually unbreakable. And you can use it in the same way as you would a ceramic cup, but it's made from the waste material. And you don't need to fire it at 1200 degrees, and it's all ergonomically designed and using industrial designers to fit it in, so significant reductions in carbon intensity in the production process, but also the packaging and delivery process as well. So that whole sort of carbon life cycle is taken into account. Just to go up a bit of a higher level, there is an online database of low carbon investment examples, which includes forestry, agriculture, and some bioeconomy type examples. It's called the Low Carbon Investment Registry. Not terribly original, and that's institutional level investment examples across a whole range of different asset classes, providing examples, and this was developed as a peer-to-peer learning platform to showcase what institutional investors are doing, can do, and how we can create new products off the back of that. So there's no shortage of innovation. There's so much innovation out there. I think to lead into the challenges part, it's the challenge of scaling up, as Dirk said, and that seems to be a universal problem in Europe and just as much in Asia and Australia. Would you like me to talk to the challenges now, or yep, keep going? Okay. So the challenges of scale is a universal one. And this lack of institutional investment grade opportunities at sufficient scale. We've got some good examples, but it's just not enough. We need many, many more. And these deals are mainly, especially in the Asian context I'm talking about principally, is mainly being filled by in the development banks, the IFC and then the European Investment Bank and Asian Development Bank and so on. So the organisation that I run, we are looking to develop new products, new investment vehicles. So we're looking to work with partners such as the European Investment Bank potentially, and we're starting dialogue with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank to try and develop ESG and climate positive deals that create a benchmark for them as they start to roll out their financing in the region as part of the China sort of One Belt and One Road initiative. And so investors are really keen to get in at the ground level and create these new investment vehicles in Asia. And we need to use these development banks for obvious reasons, because of the sovereign risk, currency risk that's involved, especially for the more sophisticated institutional investors who are very climate aware and incorporate environmental, social governance issues into their investment practices. They want to do deals offshore. They want to invest in this sort of more green and climate friendly, but there are barriers to entry that the development banks can assist with and create more of those products. So the other big challenge in the region is actually the level of investor awareness. I'm very pleased to be in a place where the investors here have, are world leading in terms of their level of sophistication on ESG integration and climate. Asia has been much slower to catch up. They've only really recently, in the last couple of years, started to take on environment, social and governance considerations into their investment processes. They're starting to take up the Sustainable Development Goals, which is really encouraging. But they've got a lot of catching up to do. The good news is that Asia is a quick study. They do catch up quickly. And you only need to look at China and India to see the rate of renewable energy deployment that's going on, that we are seeing this rapid pace of change. Still not enough yet, but we are seeing that. So as long as that keeps continuing and China keeps building the next biggest, world's largest solar factory, the next biggest wind farm, they need to keep beating these records. And if China and India keep beating these records, then, hopefully we will get on that trajectory that we need to get to. So that sort of goes to the time. Are we going to do it quickly enough? And hopefully with Asia, we are seeing that trajectory increase, and then the cost of the energy side, the renewables and solar and batteries, is having a game-changing effect. But we need to still sort of wait another year or so to truly see that sort of deployed. So I'll leave it there and pass on. Sorry.
That's okay. So I'll turn to Bernardo.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here in Finland, my first time here, and I hope we can have a great discussion and I can present a few insights on what's happening on the Brazilian side of the bioeconomy. It's a great challenge to be here at the last session of the day and have something to say which hasn't already been said. And I'll try to stick to the point, be very concise on how we see things in Brazil. I'll start with the challenges. We see at least 7 challenges. The Brazilian Industrial Biotech Association, we did this work on trying to identify what are the steps needed to achieve our ambitions as to become leaders of the bioeconomy. So first, I think it's no surprise. We had a map just before talking about national strategies and the role that it plays on developing the bioeconomy. Brazil doesn't have one. We do have separate action plans, such as the National Plan for Biotech, which includes health, pharma, agriculture, biotechnology, as well as industrial biotechnology. We don't have a national plan for biofuels, although Brazil is renowned for being the biofuels leader globally. Our last biofuel plan was back in 1972 with the pro-ethanol or pro-alcohol program, which set the whole framework for the development of the Brazilian ethanol industry. But yesterday, 2 days ago, we had passed in the Senate a bill that will create the national biofuels plan for Brazil. We only need the sanction of the president, which in the next 15 days to 2 weeks, we'll have it signed, and it's the first time Brazil will have this national biofuels plan. We need modern frameworks, regulatory frameworks. Biotechnology and the bioeconomy is a very fluid and fast-paced industry. New technologies are coming every day. We need to be prepared to receive those technologies and have our regulations be coherent with regulations that we see across the globe. Next, we require and we need suitable financing mechanisms to de-risk early stage projects. This has been mentioned many times throughout the day. and Brazil in particular doesn't have a mindset from the financing players to fund risky projects, innovative projects, especially in an area such as biotech and the bioeconomy, which we typically never sponsored. Brazil always has received the technologies when they are already ready, and the financing mechanisms, the loans, and so on and so forth, they are structured and prepared for these de-risked projects. Third, we need to stimulate a low-carbon market and demand. We have mandates for biofuels, 27% blend with the gasoline, but that is it. We don't have a stimulus for demand. We don't have a market structure that is welcoming for bio-based products. Fourth, we need lower costs for investments in green and brown fields. Brazil is known to be a very expensive place to invest across the board in any sector. We need to reduce the costs for investments. We need to attract money and investments in R&D and in production facilities, in demo plants and pilot plants. We need to reduce the costs for human resources. So we have to create this environment which is welcoming for investments, and especially foreign investments when we are competing with other countries such as China, Southeast Asia, Europe, and North America. Fifth, build a multi-stakeholder body for long-term measurement and evaluation of our policies. Every day I'm in Brasilia, Brazil's capital. We knock on doors from Minister A to Z. The bioeconomy is a very broad sector which requires us to deal with agriculture, science and technology, industry, defense, and so on and so forth. Create a carbon pricing structure and a level playing field. So at the same time that the Congress was passing the Renova Bio bill, which is the national biofuels plan, they were also approving a bill to allow tax incentives that should amount to 1 trillion reals, which would be $250 billion in tax incentives for the oil and gas industry. So it seems a bit bipolar if we are talking and implementing policies from one side which will boost the bioeconomy. On the other hand, we will also doing the same with the oil and gas industry. We need a level playing field, or else the bioeconomy will not achieve its goal in Brazil. And lastly, communicate effectively. I think that's the biggest problem that I've seen so far. We cannot compete with other industries. We have a big discussion back in Brazil about the electric vehicle. How can we compete with Tesla and Elon Musk? It's a challenge. In terms of opportunities, and I'll be very quick on this, the bioeconomy, especially the advanced bioeconomy scenario in Brazil, it's a blank sheet of paper, it's a blank book. We are currently establishing policies and strategies which will dictate how we will invest in the future. I already mentioned the national biofuels plan. We are implementing also the national action plan on science, technology, and innovation for the bioeconomy. And next year, we will also implement the national strategy for the Industry 4.0, which one of the pillars is biotech. So we are now in this perfect storm, I guess, in a positive way, where we need to tap these these opportunities to write the story that we want for the bioeconomy in Brazil.
Thank you very much. Now I'll turn to Andrei for your opportunities and barriers.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm not an expert in bioeconomic. I do represent the private business school, probably the biggest private business school in the Eastern Europe. But we do see some angle which could help us to influence the development of bioeconomy in Russia. Just 3 numbers from the very beginning. The Russia is still the biggest country in terms of the forest deposit. 21% of the global forest deposit are in Russia. The 45% of Russian territory covered by forest, but just Russia gets 1.3% in its own GDP from the timber industry, from all this huge amount of opportunities, by the way. My country is typical fuel fossil based country, or biased, if you would like, and it's a matter of policy, it's a matter of tradition, it's a matter of infrastructure. During a long period of time, the good infrastructure were created which supports the traditional oil and gas industry, oil and gas chemistry, and it's a matter of consumption behavior as well. So there is a lot to do to change this perception, or if you would like, the way of living. Next, what I would like to tell you, we did analyze about 70 programs of different Russian and international universities in the area of forestry, timber industry, and the bioeconomy. And we did find that all Russian programs, it's about 40 universities, do not deal with the leadership issue. And this industry does not been perceived as an interesting, as a high-tech comparatively with IT, for example, or nuclear industry in Russia, which envisage as a high-tech industry. And this industry, bioeconomy industry, is not attracted for talented people in Russia, young talented people, and it's a matter of change as well. And finally, what I would like to mention, it's a matter of consumer social responsibility. And it's a matter of awareness of people, what sort of products they consume, and what the production history and footprint of this particular product they use. And it's a matter of education, it's a matter of explanation, and the demand side is very important. We mostly talk about supply side, but demand side, and particularly from the ordinary consumers, not only the public procurement, is very important. So that's why we try to pay attention on technologies in this sector, which are obsolete in Russia, business practices, talent development, and consumer responsibility. And we are close to kick off the program. This program is called the Future Leaders in Forest-Based Bioeconomy. And we are very glad that we are supported by the European Forest Institute. Thank you, Mark. And particularly Mr. Esko Aho. We tried to do it with the Yale Forestry School from the US, And the international paper, the company is working in this area, supports us as well. So we are open, and those who would like to develop this particular topic, issue, and business in bioeconomy in Russia, please join our program to promote this topic in my country. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now going to turn to Mr. Wang, who's going to talk from a private sector experience.
Distinguished Chair, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very honored to be here with you today. It has been inspiring to hear all the different experiences and ideas that people have to make the bioeconomy a reality. And in many ways, my work and CANMET's work with the bioeconomy place us at the coalface. Apologies for the word. Place us in how to make this sustainable business a reality. We CANMET decided to get involved in the bioeconomy because we, like all of us here, see the tremendous potential that the realization of a global bioeconomy has in delivering a more sustainable future for us. But the need to realize this opportunity, offered up a challenge immediately to us at CANMET. It required an adjustment, a mental adjustment, and an adjustment to business model. We at CANMET immediately identified that construction of a building, such as a second-generation biorefinery, was not enough to ensure the success of the project, or the creation of markets for the bio-based products for the short or long term. We have to do more, and we have to be more than an EPC company. From our insights, we identified the investment and financing challenges facing the sector, as well as the challenge of finding suitable markets. This becomes even more pressing when a biorefinery produces a diversity of products which require a strong marketing expertise and different markets. So to secure a better tomorrow for future generations, we adjusted our business model. We call our new sustainable business model 三项联动, it's in Chinese. In sum, CANMET is now more than an EPC company. For the sake of sustainability, we also provide financial and trade options. This allows us to utilize our expertise and global relationships we have built over decades to support our project throughout its life cycle, and not only through the construction phase. We are very pleased to be applying this right here in Finland. And in the Boreal Bioreef project, our specific role will be to combine our expertise and experience as a cornerstone investor and lead EPC company, and connecting interested buyers for the biorefineries output in the Asia Pacific. To make it a success for all, by believing in the potential of the bioeconomy, while putting sustainability and people at the heart of everything we do in Kemiavi, we see ourselves as bringing people, ideas, technologies, capital, markets, and passion together to create a better tomorrow. And regarding the challenge or barriers, as I said, the investment, funding, and access to market are major challenges facing the sector. To mitigate against this, we are using this holistic, sustainable business model, which involves construction, investment, and trade. I think that would go a long way in reducing the challenges facing this sector. It's collaboration and coordination among different stakeholders in different countries and between countries. This will facilitate the market, because without a market, no new products or new process can survive. Firstly, we should create links between all stakeholders. from the farmer, the community, to the company, the waste management, to research, university, R&D institution, and to the government. Information flows and expertise across all these entities needs to be actively shared and supported. We need to have a holistic vision. In China, due to our long history of reform, which is based on scientific and education advances, we fostered cooperation between academia and enterprises, and this helped us greatly. This relationship, I believe, is important and should be supported in all countries. To have a workforce with the skills to meet the evolving demands of the bioeconomy. Furthermore, strong industry-science relationships offer great payoffs of public and private investment in R&D, as well as a country's attractiveness for venture capital. Also, how we go about educating the most important stakeholder of all, the public, is key to stimulating the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as we will be talking, so we heard that we have challenges on the policy front. I think we heard Dirk mention that. We heard that on the opportunity sides, there are some consortia or some gathering of investors that are coming forward. And as people are starting to think of what question they may want to ask, I would turn to Rebecca, and I would say, Rebecca, I was pleased to hear about this investor group that's coming forward. And then you talk on the other end about your registry of ideas. How is the idea and the investor and the market demand, the pull side being matched? Can you explain that a bit more? How are these things happening so that there is basically maximization of efforts to advance maybe the most promising or mature innovation? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, yeah, there is a little bit of a mismatch in the Asia region, especially, and there is sort of, the more sophisticated investors, especially sort of predominantly in Europe. So we are looking to, through this coalition and other work that these groups do, is to learn from the investor peers and learn about some of these investment opportunities, how they work, unpack the risk return profile, and then copy elements of that and put it back into the region and use these examples and see how they can be replicated in the Asia region, for example. So there's a lot of good ideas, and I know there's obviously China and Finland and a lot of working together already. So it's just sort of connecting those dots more and trying to replicate those good those good innovations and take them to the region, and vice versa as well, where there's good innovation in the region.
So now I'll turn to the group here, and
Judith, I'm not doing too well here. I'm kind of walking up and down, policing the aisles.
Questions or comments?
There is someone there. All right, good. No, but thank you all for that great presentations. So let me get over here. This is good exercise for me later in the evening. It'll wake me up. Here you go. Let us know your name and your company. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Cordula Knoblauch from BSF. There has been some comments on different regulations supporting or not supporting the bioeconomy. How do you see in that context the Nagoya Protocol and the Convention on Biodiversity? Is that something that might be a problem, depending on how it is implemented in some nations?
Thank you. Let me on this side, it's easier.
Yes, great question. Brazil recently passed its biodiversity legal framework, and it's definitely one of the most modern ones. We were trying to take into consideration all of the possibilities that Nagoya could bring into the Brazilian biotech ecosystem. There is great concern of what is coming up in Cancun, or it's Mexico next year, I guess, the conference of the party. So yes, it's a concern for not only government to make sure that whatever comes out of the meeting is aligned with the Brazilian legislation, but also from the private sector perspective, when innovations are coming out every single day, how that will be influenced in the past legislation. Or let me make it clear: will new technologies be in line with the legislations in Brazil and the protocol itself?
Can I perhaps just add something? I think there is a broader issue here about how we deal with regulation when there is a lot of disruption happening in the economy. I think we are seeing that not only in the bioeconomy, but in many parts at the moment. There are a lot of new business models coming forward, a lot of new ways of doing things which don't always sit very well with existing regulations. So the question is, well, what do you do then? What do you sort of, you apply the existing regulation, which sometimes can really slow down the process of change which you would like to see in the economy. I think what we are seeing a little bit across countries is that the way governments react to that differs a lot. And I think some countries are more sort of really allowing a little bit more. They're trying to sort of see a little bit what changes, how things happen. And then perhaps at some point in time when the market matures a little bit, they say, okay, well, let's now change the regulation. And I think to try and accommodate this innovation and how we deal with that in regulation is really important, considering all the change that is happening, not only in the bioeconomy. I'm seeing it, I think it's even clearer there in the digital side, but it is something which we need to think about. And I think also at the European level, I know there's been an attempt to try and have more of a link to innovation and regulation. It's really important to try and get that right.
Other questions or comments for our presentator?
We have one here. Good man. We've only got a few minutes left. Come on, guys. You can come up with some great questions for this great team here. We have a very diverse team, as you can see, from different countries, so different experiences. So for you, let me know who you are, sir.
I'm Pradipta Haldar from University of Eastern Finland. After listening to all these discussions, my easy question to you that 10% of the world people, they are controlling 94% of the resources. Can bioeconomy change that? Can bioeconomy improve 90% of the people's livelihoods, their living standard? Or we will have big bio-based companies and they are making money, but the 90% people, they are suffering as they have been doing for decades or centuries.
Thank you.
That's a really big question, particularly I think on a day that apparently the Piketty team launched a new report on income inequality and wealth inequality in the world. So it is a really big question. I do think there are some opportunities here to do things more smaller scale, local scale, to give sort of more opportunities also for communities, for towns and so on. So there are some opportunities here to do things also at a smaller scale. But whether that deals with the problem which you're signaling, I'm not entirely sure. I think there are pros and cons here, but I don't think the bioeconomy can deal with that problem on its own.
Just very quickly, we have this concern in Brazil as well, being a developing country. Planting industrial biomass is much easier than, for example, extracting oil from the ground or from the sea. So it requires, it's less technology intensive. So the power is basically on those who transform, that have the technology to transform biomass and others into bio-based products, new molecules, and so on. So we want to avoid that Brazil becomes another exporter of commodity, and this commodity being biomass, like we do with soybeans, iron ore, where the transformation into more value-added products are overseas, and then we import it back. that's our big concern. And how can we build technologies inside, foster the innovation ecosystem, so that companies will own property, intellectual property of these new biotechnologies that will come in the near future.
I just want to make my personal comments about this question. From my personal perspective, my personal point of view, bioeconomy is nothing new. Actually, bioeconomy is exactly where we were from. It's a region of our life. Just imagine, maybe hundreds or thousands of years ago, we just plant a seed and we harvest the grain, and then nothing artificial, nothing synthetic. And everybody is equal. But since the technology and science evolution and this competition became more and more unfair, and bioeconomy is going to bring us back to the origin where we are from. So I think it's going to be not the best, but should be a suitable solution for the problem or situation the world is facing. Thank you.
Just going to add before closing, if there's no more questions, that...
perhaps if I could add one,
yeah,
Judith, and
sure.
maybe it's something I think you might all address. And we heard it from the media and we've heard it from a few of you. Maybe you might share with us some of your own experiences in how are you engaging with the public? Because I think, we're talking about, the great potential for the bioeconomy, but I'm sort of missing the wow. I want to get excited about this. I can get excited about the potential, but what we see, and the wow has got to be there, but until the public see that and feel it, they're not going to get overexcited about it either. So perhaps it's also a very traditional industry, and just like, Wang just said there, it goes way back. Maybe that needs a new mind shift. Dirk, you're talking about the digital revolution. It has to happen in this industry as well. So what are you going to do to create that engagement? So we still have a bit of time. So perhaps, and if anyone's done it successfully, perhaps share that with us.
Well, I'm going to share an example that we just done in Canada, and it's the beginning of a talk, a dialogue. We just held a year-over dialogue with Canadians and stakeholders that was called Generation Energy, and it was to project the 2050. And we've had tremendous, basically, engagement. Part of this Generation Energy included bioenergy, obviously. So it was done both through the webs as well as through roundtable discussion, local roundtable discussion. I can't remember how many they were across the country, and then culminated with a national forum where basically people from all generation and all background basically shared where they wanted to be. Now we're at the stage of analyzing what that might be and how to write the roadmap basically to go there. That will apply to the bioenergy side of things. So that's an example of an engagement to start familiarizing Canadians with the art of the possible.
I can just mention something in Australia. The investors that I work with, it's not directly related to them, but there are some links being made between the retail, the beneficiaries of their superannuation funds, and there are some connections being made. There's a campaign called Generation Yes, which is a campaign for individuals showing everyday actions they can take to reduce their impact on climate, light bulbs, everyday things, and giving them the updated information. I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed by the challenge and what can I do as a person, and it's too hard and I can't do enough that needs to be done, but it's just trying to take it back to that individual level, and that's starting to resonate, and also we need to deal with the political environment in Australia, which is a bit toxic when it comes to climate change. So there's a number of different NGOs that have sprung up. There's 1 million women, so targeted women running the households, how they can have their impact with their shopping and their habits and so on. So there are some good examples out there, but obviously there needs to be a lot more.
Just perhaps to add, not so much about public engagement, but a little bit what I see happening within the OECD. We've done a lot of work to try and also make our staff more aware of their own climate impact. So, for instance, our building, we now have regular monitoring about how much water we use, how much energy we use, how much heat we use, how much electricity we use. And all of that is something which people can see on their screens basically daily today in the building, so they're aware of it and they're more focused on it. The other thing we've done is basically there's now an internal tax on air traffic. So basically if you fly a lot, which unfortunately I do, you are taxed on that, and basically that tax is then fed back into to other things which are more environmentally friendly. So I think there are things like that which do create awareness for people that basically what they're doing has an impact on climate, and it's not exactly the same as doing that, of course, with the public, which is a different story. But I think there are also things you can do internally in your own organization to create and strengthen awareness for some of these things.
In our organization, we developed a hot site to create the awareness on the impacts of CO2 in our daily lives. So every day in the state of São Paulo, 31 people die because of air pollution. So it's around 11,300 people every year. So we created this hot site to create a calculator that every day will increase the number of deaths. So people are aware that, okay, if we don't do anything, this will be the death toll, to really shock people into changing their habits and their consumption patterns. We also created a calculator about the social impact of carbon dioxide. There's an estimate by the EPA that the ton of CO2, for every ton of CO2, there is a social cost of $152. So Brazil, every day, emits more than 3 billion tons of CO2 in the atmosphere. If you do the math, every day, that's a lot of money literally burned, and which could go to education and other sorts of social investments.
Thank you very much. So I'll wrap the session now. So what I heard is that basically we're starting all at very different places. But as one speaker said earlier, said their grandfather had their talk, my father had one, and it was leadership is inspired. And I think in order to bring the bioeconomy further, we will need to have lots of leadership, not just from the top, everywhere. And I think in all these countries, these people that are around the table here are actually the leaders and inspiring. And as everything, I think, and I'll use an example from Canada, I think bioeconomy is like a hockey stick approach where you stay on about standstill for a long time, and then it will grow exponentially. It will depend to what extent you've been able to inspire through your leadership. And I've seen a lot of basically opportunities that are creating that are probably just letting the emerging thoughts around the world, but I'm very confident that we're making progress in the right directions. So join me to thank the panel members, please.
Indeed, thank you to you all, and thank you. Some very diverse points of views there. Great experience coming from, indeed, right around the world. We've managed to get, we had China, Russia, Brazil, Canada, we had everywhere in there, and Asia, of course, so that thank you all so much for that. We're now coming to our concluding session. Thank you all for staying with us. We're thrilled you're still here, and of course we're going to have a little bit of a fashion show later for those of you who have registered. Now, you did have to register for the show where we're going to see some fabulous products, some cloths, some... We're having a little show. It's going to be very, very exciting, you know, so it'll be well worth seeing some of the great products, because ultimately that's actually where the wow is going to be. Sorry we didn't get Mark and friends to dress up in the right clothing today, but they're working on it for the next time. The closing session, though, please let me bring to the panel here, looking back on the day and some of the great insight we've got from all of you sharing your experience with us. I'd like to now call the Director for Bioeconomy from the Directorate General for Research and Innovation from the European Commission, Jyrki Suominen. Jyrki Suominen, I'm nearly right.
That's a good sign.
Good to have you here with us. I'll do a little housekeeping there and clean up there in a moment. From the EU Bioeconomy panel, the chair, Joanna Dupont-English. Joanna, great that you're here with us. Thank you so much. A man who's got very little sleep in the last few weeks, who has been working tirelessly to make sure that all of this with his team has been brought together, this whole conference, this summit, all of the input that's been put in. The director of the European Forest Institute, Mark Palahi himself. So we're here thrilled that he is here. We're going to want to hear from him. And now a lady who is going to chair this session, who has many years' experience, of course, and is very passionate about the environment and sustainability. The president and CEO of Natural Resources Institute in Finland, Mary Walls. Will I take some of this away? In the middle. I was once a waitress. It never goes away. What can I take out of your way here? And you have a glass there. You're fine. That was a bad.
So thank you, Ethne, for the full service that we received. And now we really have a very challenging task ahead in wrapping up today. And I thank you very much for bearing with us. And I promise that we will be quite concise and straight to the point. And if we are very, very effective, so we might even be able to conclude a little bit ahead of schedule. So I must say that today has been very exciting, has been lots of thought, food for thought, thought-provoking, even to some extent provocative, but not too much. And I think that we've been tackling the big picture from various angles. Somebody mentioned the elephant in the morning session, and I think that we've been approaching the elephant in order to gain some kind of a picture about the vision, gain picture about concrete steps ahead, but maybe not really receiving sort of the whole full picture of the elephant yet. But let's see what our panelists will think about that. So challenges and opportunities for bioeconomy for the future. So now I would really like to give floor to these excellent experts here around the table, and really I think that we will take us back to three basic questions that are of course at the very core and essence of today's summit. And I will list these questions, and we will go then together with the panelists deeper into these. So I think that one fundament is really that why bioeconomy is important. The second one has to do that how do we make the transition, and how do we make this change? And the third one, I think, has to do with, since we are here in Finlandia Hall, we are in Helsinki, we are in Finland, we are in Europe, of course, we are part of the world. Is Europe really, are we really willing to take the leadership? And if so, what does it take? So we have here three different angles to this issue. Jyrki is representing, I would say, not only the Commission, but good governance, public sector, innovative investments, etc. So from that angle, I think that he will be tackling the first question. So please, Jyrki, if you take the floor.
Thank you very much. It's always a bit of a challenge to be in the last panel before the cocktails are being served. But I've scripted down some points, which I'll go through quickly and which I think address the questions you raised pretty well. So From the perspective of the European Commission, many positive developments are currently taking place in the European bioeconomy and for the bioeconomy in Europe. And the 2017 Bioeconomy Investment Summit is really a perfect example of the momentum which is driving bioeconomy forward in Europe, with high-level speakers representing government, policy making, policy shaping, business and finance, academia, as well as user communities. And we have a full house of engaged audience. So what more can you really wish for? So our congratulations to Mark Palahi, EFI, and the other organizers for this really great event. Now, if we look back to 2012, when the EU bioeconomy strategy was first published, and where we are now, we can see great progress in many areas. We have definitely achieved major progress concerning research and innovation investment into bioeconomy through Horizon 2020, the current EU research and innovation program, and we have almost doubled it compared to the previous FP7. Now, it is close to 4.5 billion now, and we have started major initiatives such as the BBI, the Bio-Based Industry Joint Undertaking. And as we have heard a few times today, we are also working together with the European Investment Bank to boost investment in the bioeconomy. So we have developed this circular bioeconomy financial instrument, which is included in our new work program for 2018 to 2020. And this platform, it will be a risk-sharing financial instrument aimed at de-risking innovative technologies, processes, or business models by validating them from a technological or commercial viewpoint, thereby encouraging later investments in their further development or deployment. And the platform will be run by an external fund manager, not by the EIB itself. And we are currently in the process of talking to potential investors and fund managers, but it will, of course, take some time to select the manager and set up the platform. But the target is really to launch the platform before the end of 2018. And we are putting 100 million euros into that platform from our side. And of course, we know the overall financial volume once the platform is fully set up. We have also made significant progress concerning stakeholder engagement and the uptake of the bioeconomy strategy itself at European level. We have seen that a lot of countries followed the 2012 path and developed their own strategies, not only EU member states, but also globally. And I'm very pleased to see the many guests from outside Europe in the audience today. And at the time when the Commission published its bioeconomy strategy, Germany was the only EU country that already had its own national strategy. Over the past few years, other member states, Finland of course, and recently also Norway, Italy and France, have followed with national strategies. And in the midterm review of the 2012 strategy, which we have recently completed, we have learned that it's indeed important to create more supportive and stable policy and regulatory environment. The policy context in which the bioeconomy operates has changed significantly since 2012, with EU and global policy developments such as circular economy, energy union, the Paris Climate Agreement, and the Sustainable Development Goals. In consequence, the concept of a sustainable circular bioeconomy, like we have heard today several times, is being proposed by various stakeholders. Regarding future avenues and scope of the revision of the EU bioeconomy strategy, which we plan for 2018, these are currently discussed internally with the relevant Director Generals. And I cannot say very much about that at this stage, except that as we have heard today, bioeconomy is really a vast field, and we would like to see more symbiosis between the different industries and value chains that contribute to the bioeconomy. And year 2018 will be an important year for the European bioeconomy, and we need the good momentum to continue. Bio-based innovation needs to go from niche to norm, as was very nicely put in the Leading the Way to European Circular Bioeconomy Strategy study, which was produced by EFI for this conference. And new technologies need to be upscaled and rolled out throughout Europe and its regions. So bioeconomy really has good support from many corners of the European Commission, not only from DG RTD and Commissioner Moedas, but for example, Vice President Katainen has spoken a number of times about the importance of the bioeconomy. So the speeches and presentations today, and also the great EFI Circular Bioeconomy Strategy study, have provided many valuable thoughts for the work which we have started in Brussels, not only to revise the EU bioeconomy strategy, but also to prepare for the next EU research and innovation program. So thanks once more to Mark and EFI for all the great work done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jyrki, and I think that a conclusion from your intervention would be that Commission is committed in advancing bioeconomy. Is that the right conclusion?
Very much so.
Okay, very good. But now, Janna, you are representing biotech industry, and it would be very nice to hear how you would answer to the question why bioeconomy is important and what you've learned with regards of, or how you interpret today with that regard.
Thank you, Mary. Well, it's really strange in some ways that we're all sitting here in this room and we've all got a different idea of what the bioeconomy is to a certain extent. But I think we're all very much aware of the fact that we don't just need the bioeconomy because we need to eat, because we need materials, because we need clean water, because we need nutrition, but because we all need these things. And that means the additional 2 billion people who are going to be on the planet by 2050. I think nobody in this room wants to live in a kind of world where we can say, well, that's your problem because I was born here and you were born there. So we all have to talk about the bioeconomy. Everything we've been talking about today is about how to manage those threats and challenges. And even if none of us had ever heard the word bioeconomy, we would still be finding solutions that will contribute to tackling the challenges that we face. So I think we're all going to have to keep on working on it. But I mean, for me personally, I think it's incredibly positive. All of the really huge amount of dedicated research and intelligence and industry and investment that's been going into this field. And personally, I see it growing exponentially indeed. I don't think that's just wishful thinking. I think it's actually happening. So, I mean, in terms of my own experience with maybe, and just to go back a little bit to the last panel as well, there was a question about engagement with stakeholders, as well as being Director for Industrial Biotechnology at Europa Bio and therefore having a very focused interest in biotech and the solutions that it can provide within the bioeconomy. I'm also chair of the EU Bioeconomy Stakeholder Panel, and we've been working together for the last year to develop a manifesto. It's been a really educational experience. It hasn't always been that easy. We're quite a diverse panel, and I think we represent, there's 29 people in the panel. We represent, I think, about 18 or 19 member states. We have, I think, four or so NGOs. We have regions. We have academia, industry, technology platforms. So we've been working together. We were lucky enough to inherit from the presidency, a set of building blocks, which was compiled, was a big set of perspectives from very broad stakeholder group about what were the most concerning issues, what were the actions that needed to be taken, what were the recommendations that member states and regions needed to take into account. So we started off with this very big group of subjects, and we went through each one of them one by one, and we argued and we discussed, and we eventually came to a document that we'd all contributed to, and most of which we could agree on. We couldn't agree with it 100%. There was 3 of the 29 panel members who weren't able to formally sign up to the document, but would be happy to say that they contributed to it. And I would only really encourage others, where you have the possibility to do this, to do it. It's time consuming, it can be a little bit frustrating, but ultimately it's pretty rewarding, because it's the only way that you can really find out what the concerns are on the different sides without them snowballing to the point where it becomes quite difficult to address them and you can't really reverse out of that alleyway. So I think it's just something I would say every region, every member state could benefit from going through the same process by getting all your stakeholders together, even the ones especially the ones you really don't agree with, and having this discussion about how should it develop, what are the things we have to be mindful of, what do we have to avoid, and what actions do we need to take.
Thank you, Janna. And I think that this manifesto process that you really nicely pointed out, so even though you say that it's time-consuming, but did I understand right that it was a 1-year-long process so far?
Well, it was just over a year. Yeah.
Over a year.
I mean,
yes.
Actually, we had an editorial group that met many, many times,
Yeah.
and the main group met
Yeah.
several times throughout.
So you can actually see achievements in 12 months.
Yes.
Yes. So I think that that's something really promising. Yes. And now I would like to turn to Mark, and of course, as a director of EFI, but also in charge of this European-wide policy policy network. So it will be very interesting to learn from you what you have learned today, and why you think bioeconomy is really important.
Thank you, Maria. Let me start by thanking all the speakers of today and the moderators of the sessions for the inspiring talks and the lively discussions. So from my side, a few brief reflections on why I think the bioeconomy is crucial for a sustainable future. I think, first of all, today it has been very clear that after 200 years of relying on a fossil-based economy, we have arrived to a tipping point. So the world has become too big for our planet. And if we want to address the urgent environmental problems that we are facing and at the same time meet the increasing needs of a growing population and especially of an expanding global middle class, there is no other way but to have a paradigmatic shift in our economy. So basically, we need a new economic paradigm, one where economic prosperity takes place within the renewable boundaries of our planet, where the bioeconomy becomes a prosperity engine. And why the bioeconomy is so fundamental? I think many of the speakers have already elaborated on that. While in the long term, the energy sector could be fully decarbonized, still we will need to produce an increasing amount of materials for clothing, for construction, for transport, for packaging. But if we want to address the urgent challenge of climate change, such materials, which will need to rely on carbon, will need to come predominantly from fossil-free sources. So basically from renewable biological resources. And this is basically the role of the bioeconomy, to make that possible. But there is another fundamental question, why the bioeconomy is so crucial. And I think it's important to emphasize because we usually don't do that. I think the bioeconomy is a great opportunity to address the past failure of our economy to value nature, to value natural capital. So if you think the bioeconomy offers us the possibility to empower nature as our growth economic engine by building a synergistic relationship between economy and biology. I think this is really the great power of the bioeconomy.
That was very fundamental, I think. So now let's take a quick round, and from each of you, 2 key points. How do we make the transition? What have you learned today? What is sort of the topmost 2 issues that you would like to raise? And we start from Mark.
Okay. I think I would like to come back to what Esko mentioned. I think we need urgent action, but paradoxically, we need also to be patient. So this means that we need to be able to develop a very ambitious but long-term and coherent policy framework, because we need to provide the right incentives and especially to attract the right level of investments to make the transformation of the technological realities that we have seen today and the emerging business opportunities into the future main economic reality. So to bring the niche to a norm. So this is one point. So a long-term but ambitious policy framework with all the 10 points that Esko mentioned this morning. Second point, which has been explicitly and implicitly mentioned today, we need a compelling narrative to engage with our increasing urbanized societies, which are more and more disconnected from nature and the biological cycles of nature. That is crucial. And to do that, events like these are important. We need to manage to have a continuous science, media, cities, and industry interface to be able to discuss and also present to society the challenges and the opportunities that the bioeconomy brings. So these will be my 2 points.
Action and passion, and then a good story.
Exactly.
Okay. Janna.
Well, quite similar, I think. I mean, I would, now that I've already mentioned the importance of inclusive discussion around the bioeconomy, I'll leave that one, but I do think it's really fundamental to making things mainstream. When I had to look up what making the bioeconomy mainstream or what making bio-based products mainstream actually meant in terms of the definition of mainstream at work, because we set this as an objective at Europa Bio a year or so ago. How do we make bio-based products mainstream? And mainstream basically means used or accepted broadly, if you look it up. That means that we need to have bio-based products easily accessible, easily identifiable for consumers to choose, to have the choice. So a lot of that is obviously about communication and awareness raising of the potential that these things is possible to produce these, and there are benefits. And I think what Tom Heap, the journalist from Countryfile and BBC, who was here this morning, said was really relevant about the human element. I mean, we can be extremely excited because we've made a new kind of molecule, had a special kind of reaction, and produced something in our lab that's just wondrous. But if we write an article about it in those terms, nobody's going to care. If we write about an article about it saying, we've made this, it never existed before, and it means that you can have that, or next year we can produce this, and it's going to make that difference for you and your family, then it suddenly becomes already more tangible and understandable. So I think that's another thing. The other thing I would say is, obviously, you're thinking about accessible, identifiable, mainstream. We need to be talking more to brands, I think, and I know some of the speakers today have done that, but really understanding from brands what are the barriers preventing them from producing more. And we're seeing more and more brands, from car manufacturers, from people like Toyota to Mercedes to Renault, L'Oreal, Nike, IKEA, Lego, etc. We know that brands are interested, but there are barriers there that are preventing them from moving to bio-based sooner. And I think talking to them and understanding what they need will help the transition as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Were there more than two that you mentioned? I think I counted at three. So making or thinking mainstream. So it's communications, awareness, accessible, and also the brand issue, and really sort of pushing there, but understanding also that it's a delicate, sensitive issue. But now, Jyrki, quick two.
So from a European strategy perspective, of course, we got an early start, and now we have had the opportunity to review our strategy. So we know where the issues are, where we need to do more. So in the revision of the strategy, we need to fix the bottlenecks, and then, as was discussed this morning, then we just need to deliver. And I think the idea that bioeconomy needs to go from niche to norm encapsulates the thinking really well. But here, having spoken about the European strategy, I cannot overemphasize the importance of the member states and the regions to deliver bioeconomy in Europe. So that was quick 2 points.
Thank you. So identifying bottlenecks, seeking for solutions with the palette that the Commission has, and then understanding regions and also member countries' commitment. Very good. Okay, and then our third one, the question, has to do with what will it take if we really wish to take a leadership in this room, in Northern Europe, or all the committed countries. So how would you respond to this based on the discussions we've had today? So maybe if we start with Janna.
I think we asked this question at one other event this year, and somebody said, just keep going. Because actually the people who've been successful in the bioeconomy are the ones who've lasted, who've kept going, and who have stamina. So the variables will change, the environment will change, and if you keep going and you're still there and you have the benefit of your experience, that's one thing. I think we need more investment fora like this one. Finland and Helsinki had an investment, not an investment forum, but an event in the beginning of December called Slush 2017, which I know about because I follow some young people on Twitter. And it has 17,000 participants, and they're all young entrepreneurs interested in disruptive technology. And bioeconomy was there, but needs to be there even more than it was this time. I know that some of your companies were there, and I really think that's a good place to be. Then in addition, I would just really encourage everybody to, where you see links between what you're doing and delivering on sustainable development goals, highlight it as much as you can to your decision makers in your member state, in your region, in Brussels. The discussions are starting now on the European Union's research and innovation framework on FP9. So now is the time to make sure that people realise that what you're doing is making a difference on delivering on grand challenges and particularly on sustainable development goals. We don't have that long to do that. I think it's really to make an impact in the next few months. So I would really encourage you to do that.
Thank you, Johanna. Jyrki, what would you say in terms of are we willing to make the commitment?
Yes, so I would sustain what was said previously, that we need to keep doing what we are doing at the moment. We have a very good technological base. We do have issues and bottlenecks in upscaling and then going commercial. We have identified those bottlenecks. We have started to address them, like through the thematic investment platform, which I mentioned. Of course, it has a limited capacity at this stage. The next discussions on the next multi-annual financial framework are coming up, so we basically need to hope and rely that the next MFF will serve the bioeconomy well.
Thank you. Now, Mark, what is your view on, are we willing to make the commitment? Are you willing to take the commitment, and what happens then?
I wish we take the commitment. I am not so sure if it will happen, because there may be that some other countries will take the lead. But I think we need to scale up our level of ambition. And just to be very brief, what we should do, as Koaho has mentioned this morning, in 4 words: bioeconomy, European single bioeconomy market. As simple as that, as ambitious as that. But I think we need to start talking about that. European Investment Bank, the Commission, Prime Ministers, politicians. I think these 4 words summarizes the level of ambition where we need to go. Yes. Very brief, but I think these 4 words is a good summary.
Yeah, we are seeking a summary, so at least there is one very concise one. I have a surprise question for all of you, since the holiday season is approaching, and of course it's a gift-giving season. So what would be your gift that would really be in the spirit of bioeconomy? Your personal spirit now, out of the roles of professions. You have kids, Mark.
Yes.
What would you have for them as a gift?
I think I am already giving them the gift, and it's the pleasure, the privilege to live in Finland, in a city like Joensuu. So I think they are living already in the land of Santa Claus. So what better gift I could give them? So
That's a good one.
I think this is the gift I am giving them. I think we are living close to nature. We are enjoying simple life, but very authentic. And I think this is the best gift that I can give them.
Yes, and I'm sure that they will be enjoying it, provided that we get the snow.
Yes.
Janna, what would be your gift suggestion?
Oh, Mark already had a really good one. So no, but I really.
Come to Finland also.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, but I really agree. I think it would be a fantastic thing if more young people had the opportunity to see bioeconomy in action, who could go to working farms, could go to forests, could go to places where natural resources are being used to make renewable products, so that they really get a tangible sense of it. I suppose, the best gift that we can give them is that we leave this place in a better state that, we found it. So but that's a pretty big challenge, but I think many people are committed to it, and especially in this room.
And Jyrki, now we are excited.
Yes, well, I'm pretty much on the same lines. So I do hope that all the hard work which we are doing here to progress bioeconomy pays off, and that we and our future generations can really live well within the limits of our planet.
Thank you. I have nothing more to add. I think this was a perfect conclusion for our summit. So, view for the young and future. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just let me add a very big thanks to Mari and to all of our panel. Thank you all so much. And a gift to all of you. We have, of course, now a little drink, perhaps. It's kind of a seasonal thing to do. And I love to be able to say this. I live in Dubai, and I rarely get to invite anybody in the audience for a public drink after a conference. So this is very nice. It's very unusual. So we do have, of course, the bio-based industry event now, just in Hall B. We're going to see some fabulous fashion. We're going to see some wonderful products. We're going to see the bioeconomy in action. So I'm actually very excited about this, and get to touch and feel some fabrics and really see what's going on out there, and see samples of what can become like major mass, commercial products. And this is ultimately where this has to go, because when everybody on the street is out there wearing it and feeling good about it and talking about it and being excited about it, then we're there. And I think, that's the opportunities that are there, the interest is there, but it's up to you guys to deliver and to feed that need. But again, to bring the wow into the industry, because that's what it's got to be. Everybody's got to be talking about you. The buzz has to be there. So I believe Philip Mengel is somewhere around. Where's Philip? Maybe he's busy getting everything ready for us. But Philip is, of course, the executive director of the Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking. So I know himself and his team have been putting together this event for this evening. So I'm sure they will surprise and excite us with what they've got in order. So for me, I think from all the team, Anne, Ulla, everybody who worked so hard, and Mark to put all this together. And again, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute delight. I've never been in Finland before. I've never been this cold before. But I did manage to purchase maybe not a bioeconomy coat, but believe me, I have one that can keep a family of 6 warm. It's an incredible thing. It's like, whoa, this is great. Not sure what I'm going to do with it after this trip, but it's a joy to put it on. So thank you all. I've had a wonderful day. I hope you all have. I think we've all, as I said, our panelists today have engaged, informed, educated, and hopefully inspired each and every one of you to take action and to move forward. So once again, thank you all. Thank you so much.